Okay, so let's go to the customs of the Tagalogs by Juan de Plasencia. So we're going to discuss this document because this section shows the different practices and customs noted down by the Fray Juan de Plasencia in his account Customs of the Tagalogs. The Tagalogs had long been practicing these even prior to the arrival of the Spaniards. Such as practices only proved that Filipinos already lived with political, economic, and cultural systems prior to the Spanish colonization of the Philippines. Okay, so let's have a little bit of a look back. Okay, so always look back to our past because it is who we are. It is us before colonialism. We shouldn't set aside our own culture that we had before the Spaniards came. Okay, all right, so let's go to the background of the author. As I've said, it's important to know who our authors of our primary sources are. So we would know where they were coming from when they were writing our sources. No, so first is let's get to know Juan de Plasencia. So Fray Juan was born to the illustrious family of the Portocarreros in Plasencia in the region of Extremadura, Spain in the early 16th century. His father, Don Pedro Portocarrero, was a captain of a Spanish schooner who died in Naples, Italy in 1574. Juan de Plasencia died in Liliw, Laguna in 1590. So here are some important data about our author. No, he is believed to have arrived in the Philippines in 1578 after a stopover in Mexico. As soon as he arrived, he joined forces with another missionary, Fray Diego de Oropesa, and they both started preaching around Laguna de Bay and Tayabas, Quezon, in Quezon province, where he founded several towns. No. During the following years, they also credited with the foundation of a large number of towns in the provinces of Bulacan, Laguna, and Rizal, such as Tayabas, Caliraya, Lukban, Mahayhay, Nagcarlan, Lilio or Liliw, Pila, Santa Cruz, Lumban, Pangil, Siniloan, Morong, Antipolo, Taytay, and May Kawayan. As a friar, Juan de Plasencia lived up to his pledge, leading a lifestyle devoid of any luxury and in constant contact with the people he was trying to convert to Christianity. He was also referred to be a defender of the native population, looking after the poor, ill, or neglected, and standing up for their rights on numerous occasions. He was also very keen on creating primary schools and requested official sanction for the creation of educational centers where Filipinos could not only learn Christian doctrine but also reading and writing and some arts and crafts so they would become after not only good Christians but also useful citizens. Yan yung mga gustong mangyari noon ni Fray de la Plasencia. Okay? And an initiative that was approved by Domingo de Salazar, the first bishop to see of Manila in 1512 and 1594. So, here's a few important details on the customs of the Tagalogs. Now, this document is again written by our author, Juan de Plasencia. So, it was written on the year 1589 during the Spanish colonial period. After receiving the lordship's letter, Plasencia wished to reply immediately, but he postponed his answer in order that he might first thoroughly inform himself in regard to people's request and to avoid discussing the conflicting reports of the Indians. Therefore, he collected Indians from different districts of old men and those of most capacity, and from them he have obtained the simple truth. After weeding out much foolishness in regards to in their government, administration of justice, inheritance, slaves, and dowries, customs of the Tagalogs is a part of either chapters or subsections of longer monographs, okay, written by the chroniclers of the Spanish expeditions to the Philippines during the early 16th and 17th centuries. They appeared initially in Blair and Robertson's 55 volumes, no? 55. The Philippine Islands, 1903, and in the Philippine Journal of Sciences, 1958, okay? So that's a bit of a background for the documents, no? So content analysis, okay? Let's go to the datos. The chief who governed the people and were captains in their wars whom they obey and reverence. Yan yung datos. Okay? Kumbaga, in our day, ito na yung ating barangay captain. Okay? And then, barangay or a family of parents and children relations and slaves. Okay? So, yan na yung pinaka-community before. The three castes, the nobles, the commoners, and the slaves. Okay? Situation 1. Those who are maharlikas on both the father's and the mother's side continue to be forever, and if it happens that they should become slaves, it is through marriage. Okay? Situation 2. If maharlikas had children among their slaves, their children and their mothers become free. Ayan ha. So if you were a rich person before, or if you were a maharlika, yung kataas-taasan ka, if you have children with your mga alila, yung mga anak mo and them, yung alila mo na nabuntis mo, will become free of their alila level or their slave level. Okay? Situation 3. If maharlikas had children by the slave woman of another, the slave woman was compelled when pregnant to give her master half of a gold tail. Half of a gold tail. In this case, half of the child was free if the father Maharlika recognized him. If not, the child will become a whole slave. So, situational, see situation 3. Depending lang siya. There's an if. If the father recognized the child, okay, magiging free siya. If hindi, whole slave pa rin yung anak. Okay? And that is pag anak, pag alila or slave noong isang maharlika ang nabuntis mo. So situation 4, if a free woman had children by a slave, they were all free, provided he were not her husband. Okay? So yan yung situation. If isang babae ay isang malaya, tapos nagkaroon ka ng anak sa isang slave, malaya kayong lahat. There's no situation or there's nothing that would bind you to anything. Situation 5, if two persons married, of whom one was a maharlika and the other a slave, namamahay or a sagigilid, the children were divided. Odd of birth order, first, third, and fifth. Belong to the father, even birth order, second, fourth, or sixth. Belong to the mother, only child. Half free, half slave. So, yun yung mangyayari. Hati po. Kalahati ng mga anak is free, kalahati ng mga anak is slave. Okay? And let's say yung maharlika is yung father. Okay. So maharlikas could not, after marriage, move from one village to another without paying a certain fee in gold, ranging from 1 to 3 taels, and a banquet. Maharlikas could not, after marriage, move from one village to another without paying a certain fee in gold, ranging from 1 to 3 taels and a banquet to the entire barangay. So, magpapapiesta kain, bongga, dapat before ka lumipat, as arranged among them. So, there's a special case. When one married woman of another village, the children were afterwards divided equally between the two barangays. Investigations made that the sentences passed by the dato must take place in the presence of those his barangay. They had laws by which they condemned to death a man of low birth who insulted the daughter or a wife of a chief. Likewise, witches and others of the same class. Dowries are given by men to the women's parents before marriage. Yan, uso yan noon. And if the parents are both alive, they both enjoy the use of it. Divorce and dowries, death of wife or husband, dowry, and arranged marriage. Yun. So, let's go to the worship of Tagalogs. Worship of the Tagalogs. No, so before there were no temples, simbahan, temple, or place of adoration, pandot or festival celebrated, sibi, sorihile, nagaanitos. Okay? So, those are the worships. Meron tayong idols before. We have Bathala, we have Likha, Dian Masalanta, patron of lovers and of generation. Lakapati and Indianale, patrons of cultivated lands and the husbandry. Tala, 7 little goats, the Pleiades. Mapolon, change of seasons. Balatik, or the greater bear. Buaya, Tigmamanugin, Bird, no established divisions of years, months, and days. The Catalonan, officiating priest, offerings and sacrifices, belief on bearing child. So let's go to the Catalon. There are other characters that you need to know. We have the Catalonan, the Manggagaway or the witches, the Manyisalat, Mankokolam, Hokloban, Silagan, Magtatanggal, Oswang, Manggagayoma, Sonat, Pangatohan, Bayogwin. Okay? So, let's go to the relevance of the document in the modern time, no? The work itself is a product of observations and judgments. Therefore, it is probable that Juan de Placentia's work might contain partiality in presenting his observations and judgments. Pre-conquest society were not swept by the advent of the Spanish regime. It has continued to serve as a basis for historical reconstructions of the Tagalog society. Okay? So, many of the 16th century beliefs and the practices are still present today, di ba nga? It affirms that during the pre-Hispanic period, Filipinos already have government as well as a set of beliefs and practices. Some of our perceptions on Filipino beliefs and practices are somehow on different from Juan de Placentia's point of view. Okay? So, yun na nga. We always look back because we always look back to our past because it is who we are. It is us before colonialism. We shouldn't set aside our own culture that we had before the Spaniards came. So what does this all mean? Why are we even discussing De Plasencia? Matagal naman na siyang patay. This is all about you knowing how to classify your source, no? Because as we said noon, we evaluated our primary, during our prelims, we evaluated our primary and secondary sources. Now, di ba pag sinabi nating primary source, ito talaga yung original, ito talaga yung pinagkuhaan ng lahat-lahat ng secondary sources. Okay, itong document na Customs of the Tagalog is considered as a primary source. Why? Because it is written by Juan de Plasencia, who was present at that time. He was observing the customs of the Tagalog. So, ito na nga. We had an identity before the colonial period of our history. We had these bathalas, we had these customs where we pay dowry and everything. And what this part of our discussion is trying to give us is we have to determine the practices and customs of the Tagalogs and visualize the type of community that Filipinos had prior to the arrival nga of the Spaniards. So you have seen that we already have the barangays, di ba? And compare and contrast the pre-Hispanic customs of the Filipinos to the practices that the Spaniards introduced. So yun na nga, nung dumating yung Spaniards, there's already a boost in education, there is already this idea that we have to be able to read and write, and also yun na nga, malayo siya dun sa ano. I think they were trying to also separate us from our prior beliefs with the Bathalas. They were trying to convert us to Christians so we would believe in the Christian doctrine. Also, here, the relevance of this document in our present times is we have to know if yung ating author ba is really part of our society, or kumbaga first hand niyang na-experience yung ating what do you call this, our experiences, because Juan de Plasencia was a fray and galing siya sa Spain, so there's a possibility na yung mga sinulat niya is limited to just his observations. He was not part of it, or hindi siya nakikisali doon sa mga practices natin. So everything is just descriptive. Hindi niya, it is limited to just what he is seeing, or yung empirical evidences na nakuha niya through observing the Filipinos. And as we said, usually, before we consider a primary source, dapat part talaga yung isang tao noong isang event, no? So the phenomena of the culture of our customs, no, anong mga Tagalog, is that yun na nga, it is written as a primary source by a person who was observing the culture before. So I'm just gonna ask you students, no, in your opinion, is this, would you consider this as a primary source based sa ating discussion? Because this is the main goal of our discussions. I need to know if you can really determine if a source is a primary or a secondary source, o ano, first hand or second hand ba siya. Okay? So, this is my challenge for you with our next topic, which is all about, ano ba yung next topic natin? It is all about